going a bit further and how can we harness a bit new kind of data at this time. So it was like 10 years ago. And that's funny to see that and to see how they can think like this, coming from the statistical background to the computer science, while if you are in an empty space right now, you are living in a more digital country in a sense by default, so your society is already more connected.
Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to the Actionable ESG Talk series brought to you by AKFI, Actionable Knowledge Foundational Institute, the world's first nonprofit industry consortium committed to bridging the gap between ESG, sustainability, and digital transformation. My name is Isabella. I'm the co-host and here with Manuel, another co-host, and our special guest today, Yoann. Yoann, welcome.
Hi, Isabella.
Hi, so great to have you. I read your bio and I'm very actually inspired and love to hear more of what you're sharing. Before we started, just a quick intro to our audience about who you are. So Yoann is an entrepreneur and he's leveraging his sociology and data science education to co-create solutions for the future. That sounds wonderful. So after some times as a data science consultant in France and joining the data and digital transformation efforts, in 2018, you started a social enterprise called, please help me with the name to say it properly.
Called That's Happy.
Data-B.
Data and happiness together. That's the goal, always for positive and technology.
Data and what? Sorry?
And happiness.
Happiness. Okay. Data-B. Oh, now it's easier for me to say it because I got the meaning behind it. Thank you for clarifying it. Data-B in 2018 to bring data analytics and digital solutions to smaller impact-driven organizations. And in the meantime, the empowerment of young talents with no experience through the consulting projects Data-B was realizing has always been the key. So it seems like you're also focusing on the younger generations, the rising populations. And Yoann is looking forward to reshaping the various projects he's contributing to or building into a meta ecosystem to facilitate collaborations globally and co-generate more impact. Thank you, Yoann, for being here to bring us your vision and looking forward to hear what you have to share. And to start our conversation, please share your vision with us based on what you do and how you observe the sustainability and evolution of digital transformation.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction. I would say that one thing that is key for me is to always put in perspective the different elements of both digital and sustainability and entrepreneurship as well, based on the background and even the sociological and many other aspects of life and business overall by my nomadic way of living. So right now I'm in Uzbekistan. I was in a 7,000 meters mountain last week in Kyrgyzstan, and that's where you see that even here you have technology coming in. You have a perfect 4G coming to the village, for example, that is here, but they still live in a very, I would say, old way in this village. While if you want, you could create like a kind of business center and work remotely. They don't even know about it. So that's the kind of things that are interesting, because I moved in a sense from France to Southeast Asia, and after that more a bit in East Africa, and now in Central Asia for a few months. And that's always linked to what we see in real life, that we can envision at the end, how digital and sustainability can bring together something positive, I would say, for what we have to experience, to live on. So that's always in this angle that I'm looking at, and particularly the empowerment of the youth, but not only also how we can reskill the population, particularly in those countries that are a bit less open to these technologies. I would say for the moment, I think it will change very fast. That's what we see overall in different countries. So if at the same time they can bring sustainability in the topic, being here in Central Asia where you have a lot of coal, and I slept even in a coal mine, for example, recently. So based on this different kind of experience, that's what we see. So on the energy transition, for example, here we can see that not a lot of things are going on. So these travels are not here to explore new location by default. It's more to open new eyes on what's going on and have new perspectives on how we can bring the main transition of our time, I would say, for the best of it. So for positive futures on both the social and environmental impact, with a shared governance will be even better.
Thank you. Well, no, I'm also a big social person. So hearing what you say, it's really resonating with my ground. And but I'm stuck at how to really execute it. So I can't wait to hear your real experience and to see from the other perspective.
Yeah, no, I think it's good, Manuel.
I don't know if you know Yoann, but also Isabella is an author of a bestseller, her first book called The Digital Mind of Tomorrow. So she's searching. She has questions. It's a book of questions to which I'm sure you start to have many answers. I'm very excited also to see that you are in the field as opposed to, you know, in a nice office somewhere in France or in the US. So
thank you for pointing that out, Manuel. Maybe that's something I need to do too. To be out there, yeah, to be out there to really observe.
To be honest, yes, it's always bringing like I would say a new perspective on how you can bring things together. That's been for me the main element. So when I was in Lyon in France or when I was in Singapore, that was like more the beginning of my career. And I was more on the tech and office kind of mindset. And I started to travel a bit more in Southeast Asia, discovering new cultures and new elements. And now I can work from anywhere. I can jump on any kind of calls, or more or less like from anywhere. I took some meetings in front of the Coliseum, and a few days after, I can work in a co-working or at home or anywhere. And that's exactly the kind of things. And when you meet people where they are, it's a bit different as well. So that's the kind of things that are always interesting to see, and I love to observe. So definitely on the sociological kind of mindset on bringing to life, in a sense, your experience based on what you see, and even to exchange with people that have a different point of views as well. It's very interesting. And you can go to an Halloween party in Tashkent and meet someone that is teaching in a university here, data analytics, and discuss a topic. So that's the kind of very good things of life as well.
Actually, when we started to talk, when we had our first chat, you talked a lot about your vision, about the nexus of digital innovation, entrepreneurship, and how to merge those in positive solutions for sustainability of the environment and the communities. And I wanted, if possible, to share this also with our audience. Which you already started, I should acknowledge that.
Yeah, absolutely. Just to put the context, so as it was said in the introduction, so I started a social enterprise, and I would say that I don't care much now in this kind of ladle anymore. But my main goal was really to use my skill for more positive projects, because working as a consultant or for a large manufacturing chemical company after that was a very enriching, I would say, experience for me personally. And that's where for transformation, you learn a lot inside like a 30,000 employees company on how it can work, on more the influence that you need as well to make the change for larger organization. But it was a bit more difficult for me to really measure like the impact that I could have. And that's why I wanted to take that on the other side. And while I had this safety in terms of job, because like I could work for other companies at any time, why not trying something that is a bit less common, I would say. So that was my goal, to bring this kind of skills more on the consulting side at the beginning for data analytics or digital transformation projects for smaller SMEs that are already engaged. So they could have a label as a social enterprise or be an NGO or a non-profit. Particularly in Southeast Asia, we worked a lot in Cambodia, for example. And that's exactly the kind of things that I wanted to try at the beginning. And I was teaching in university already in France, even when I was studying. So the education was something that was key for me as well. And what we saw a lot was you can find many knowledge online, but it's very difficult to find a project to apply your skills. So if we can bring at the same time juniors that could experience what is a real life project with us while working on something that is good, we can find a win-win situation. And that's how we, before COVID, because now we are changing a bit, but we were already working like this as a one-way marketplace where we can really empower individuals on our projects, ensuring the quality of the project, of course, more the direction and coordination of the project. But that was really the goal of it. So digital first can help these kind of more purpose-driven organizations. It can help a lot of sustainability projects, that's for sure. And particularly in the developing countries, and even if I don't like this vocabulary at all, because they have so much more to bring as well in the other topics than just like the pure development as we see that. But in the emerging economies, we see a lot of people that are really looking forward for new skills, new opportunities, and they really learn by themselves. They go for boot camps, they go for trainings, but they lack the opportunities at the end to apply things. So that's where entrepreneurship is also something very important in this kind of ecosystems, because they have to create more jobs than what they have on the market, because the jobs are not coming to them yet fully. So it's starting to be, and remote jobs is more and more accessible for them. Hopefully, they speak pretty well English, more than what I was probably speaking English when I was myself a student in France, to be honest. So that's, I think, changing a bit. But for them, they need the first opportunities combined to those opportunities and skills that they can have along the way to really make the change. Because for them, it's difficult to have, in a sense, a flight and an opportunity to go to the US or to Europe. So remote and COVID, I think, is helping a bit more on that. It's very competitive, of course. So that's why if you can help them a bit more, that's something that is there. And on the tech entrepreneurship, but also like, as we said, on all those transitions, so you can help entrepreneurs to have a good vision on both digital and this kind of sustainable topics from the beginning. And like this, they are more future proof, because like they will build something, even if it's not a tech product or a tech startup by itself, knowing how digital can help from the beginning. You will not lose your time on knowing your customer, engaging with them, or even managing your donations, your accounting, and all those kind of elements that are linked to the digital transformation of any organization. So they really need to, if they want to be even more impactful, to embrace both digital and purpose. So that's really the kind of elements that are key if we want to boost the impact overall, because that's the kind of element that we are looking for, I would say.
I think you clearly highlighting the strong connection between digital technology and digital culture. And pardon me, many companies actually fail on bringing the culture along. So many established companies, large companies that try digital transformation, they fail because they fail to make a cultural transformation. They fail to really realize the new business models that the technology brings, and of course to leverage them. So very insightful view, and again, appreciate the view from the field as opposed to the view from a nice office.
And something that is maybe key on that is like, as they have less things that are established, they have an opportunity to leapfrog, because you don't have to deconstruct and build again. And mobile money, for example, in Africa is like just perfect for that. As an example, so they leverage a technology that took like years and years to come, like to send money to a mobile number in Europe or in France at least. it's just even not even working yet. And now they can pay with like kind of SMS model where like that's kind of crazy when you think about that. And you can even have a loan like this. So you have even like models that are at the same time impactful socially, and you can bring many different aspects of it. And they can just build new things without like the constraint on trying to change that. Because I saw that from different angles. So I did a quick internship for Statistic Canada when I was doing my master. And it was funny because it was the beginning of more big data and computer science with statistics. Because when you work with Statistic Canada, we are already like, you're mostly working with census, traditional surveys, quantitative analysis, and so on. But at the same time, they are going a bit further. And how can we harness a bit new kind of data at this time? So it was like 10 years ago. And that's funny to see that and to see how they can think like this coming from the statistical background to the computer science. While if you are in an empty space right now, you are living in a more digital country in a sense by default. So your society is already more connected and you can build your business super quickly on internet. And so you can leverage all those elements in a new way and you don't have to change what you were doing before to do that. So that's something that is very interesting because you don't have to fight internally as we could have done, for example, when I was working with Solvay as well. We have to convince many people, many middle management, many projects, in a sense, project leaders that it can make sense for them to do that. No, you don't even have to do that when you don't have to deconstruct. You can just say, oh, how do we want to build it? Oh, let's integrate digital. So I think they can really make a big jump on that at different levels. And we will see more and more coming. And you can see that already in startup competitions or this kind of elements. You have more and more people from Nigeria, from countries where they are pushing a lot, basically from countries like this, or from Vietnam and so on, where they will be more digital native and they will gain a lot, I think. So that's, and they have to because their audience is all connected. I mean, like 10 times more than we are in Europe or the old world, I would say.
I'll give a supporting evidence of what you're saying, but I worked on the technology side for M-Pesa. M-Pesa is the money transfer, one of the first starting in Kenya and now I think spreading through Africa and Asia. And also I looked at the transfer of the same technology to Latin America, where, as you said, a lot of people are left behind because there is no banking or banking system. We are used, like in France, in the US, in Canada, to 80-90% of people being in the banking system. So the technology is not evolving as fast. The innovation is not evolving as fast as we've seen it in Africa and we've seen it in Latin America. So it's and on the back of this evidence, can you define for us GoCal and how do you see it and how do you use it more importantly? I'm not looking for a dictionary definition.
There is no need, I think, for, I will say, a dictionary definition. Basically, and that's really a mindset. So when I created the company, my goal was also to be able to move myself. So more at a kind of personal level to be more flexible, I would say at first. But very quickly at the end, what you see is like the need to localize. Because whatever you are doing, you need to push on localization, on your approach, on your product, on the language, on many things like this. And that's where at the end, I would say global has to come by default. When you want to be operating in different places, you always have to localize. Now, if you take more the people approach, and that's I'm doing the most, is like you have no choice. I mean, if I want to build a project, and we were working a lot on trying to push a few things on digital skills in the region, so in Central Asia. Here, English is a bit less common than in East Africa or in Southeast Asia because like it's mostly the Russian that is the main language overall. And of course, if you want to push something here, you will have to do something in Russian or in local language even more. If you want particularly to target the less privileged communities or the less modern city people that you could find having multiple languages. The more you go to the rural space, the more you have to go. So if you want to reach everyone at a local level, you need to adapt. And that's where you bring this global by default. And so we really aim to, for example, that's where the global makes sense a lot. So it's not to reinvent the wheel. So we're talking about the mobile money that is there. Do you need to reinvent mobile money in Latin America or in Europe or in other places? No, you have to adapt and see how a model that is working somewhere can work somewhere. And so particularly into entrepreneurship, it's a big need. And from Southeast Asia to East Africa, particularly, my main example is banana leaves packaging. We had too much plastic, so we had the banana leaf syndrome in Indonesia because we used like our Western modern way of packaging, and they were throwing banana leaves in the river on the ground. Now they use that in the plastic, and you have a lot of plastic pollution. That was just before now. Now this size that they have a problem with it, they go back to banana leaves packaging a bit more in Southeast Asia, but like in East Africa, even if they have same quantity or even more sometimes banana trees, they will not use this resource as a source of packaging because they were not used to that. So what if we could just bring the idea on like, oh, you could do that. You don't have to reinvent everything. You can have a new African business that is now solving packaging issues with, in fact, a methodology that is there. So it's like more of a general knowledge that you can share and bringing more collaboration. So if you can facilitate, coordinate, building the bridges basically on these ecosystems and people that want to change. And that's where I would say the global is like just the perfect way of doing. The pure global is not working. We see that a lot. We cannot just bring the same thing everywhere. And particularly when we talk about people and the planet, we have to adapt. And at the same time, it's just making so much sense to engage with people. So we all share the same planet, but we all have different needs in a sense. And even when you are in France, if you live at my parents' place or like 20 kilometers from here, you move from a farmer background to a city, and it's not the same. So yes, in the city you can have no car, but you go to my parents' place. I need to walk 6 kilometers if I want to go back to my parents' place. Yes, so I need the transportation mean, and that's where you need to adapt and to localize, and that's where we really think a lot of things on the global side, either for digital skills, but even more on the entrepreneurship side, on bringing this collaboration there, I would say.
Before I'll ask Isabella to ask her questions. Wanted to highlight something that maybe it's a small thing, but many companies, many large companies, when they are faced with sustainability, they are faced with the challenge of reducing their profitability. And I want to come back to your banana leaf and the reducing of plastic, that it's, checking on all 3 points. It checks on profitability. It checks on, saving the planet from, plastic waste and plastic production, and also helping the people in the region, right, to have better environment. And also the cost of shipping their product. So it checks on all 3 points, which is a challenge. You have been a consultant, and you know that this is one of the consultant questions. Okay, I'll do digital transformation, I'll do sustainability, but I don't have the money, or I don't want to pay the money to reduce it.
And this example of packaging, it's never thought about it before, but like that's an exact example on why we should localize and not globalize. If you take a global approach, what you will say is like, oh, I have this amazing product. I want to bring that to Indonesia or wherever it's not existing yet. But I have to understand how it is locally. Locally, do you have like plastic recycling? Not at all. Do you have that and that, or even education about how it works? No. So you have to also adapt and localize. If you just bring what you can do in France to somewhere, or what you do in the US to somewhere else, even from like US to France, it doesn't work. We don't have the same. So based on that, you cannot bring the same solution without creating a problem in a sense, or without even like envisioning the risks that you have by bringing this solution if you don't think locally, because you don't adapt to the local ecosystem, needs, habits. by just bringing the old way of doing. So you bring, yes, a new solution, but with potential new issues that you didn't even think about. It's not a problem to bring like new challenges. Yeah, when you bring something new, you always have new challenges, but you have to think about it. And that's where you localize. If you just globalize, oh no, you don't care. I'm just doing mass production of the same thing and sending that here. And that's all. So that's interesting to think about it as well, like in this angle.
Yeah, I'm almost hearing the words embrace diversity. That's basically what we're trying to do here by localize, because I think the hardest thing to transform is the mentality, it's the way people think, and some culture barriers just stronger than other. And as Johan said, if you think you're the best, you don't care about everyone, you just do it your way. It may work for some people, but it's not working for sure for those culture strong locations and regions. So I think that's one of the I think that's the first time I hear this locally, to focus on localization when thinking about sustainability and digital transformation, to respect the culture and to see how to go from their angle to execute the plan.
I fully agree. And what I will add in terms of diversity is like, it's really a kind of empathy mindset that you embrace a lot. So you have only this diversity that you can support and that you can use by default if you try to understand who you want to serve. And if you already want to, if you understand who you want to serve, and at the same time you don't want to do bad things, that means that you will mitigate a lot of risk, and you will already be in a pretty good path to be like a good company, because you will have at the same time a good product, a good service that you adapt to different people at different places. At the same time, you understand the risks, so you are already working on like not like yeah, not bringing like bad things for both planet and people at the same time. So if you already do that, you're already in the way of doing like a pretty ethical business at least, and doing yeah, not harming the planet. So you will already maybe not regenerate the planet yet, but you will already be a good business by default, just by harnessing this kind of global approach and empathy that will by default bring all this diversity and inclusion of people and environment. That's true.
Beautiful. Any other case studies, stories you like to share in terms of these kind of locally strategy with new technologies, those buzzwords that we've been hear about, decentralization, DAOs, and things like that?
I'm not sure if
Wi-Fi doesn't like buzzwords.
no. I think the image froze for a second.
Yeah, I'll
let's give it a couple of seconds. But in the meantime, it's really refreshing, and I'm taking this freezing of image as a good sign.
I think
that
it kills the network to do that.
Okay, sorry, Wi-Fi. We can skip this question if you don't like it. We don't have to talk about DAOs or buzzwords.
I think it's good. You talked about shared governance and something that is very centralized in the region. So that's why it's no, we are not spied that much. But no, definitely, I think on on the digital transformation that is now coming, there is really something that I like, because like for a long time I was trying to find more a cooperative model in what I was building. So that was really the mindset. How can you have like different circles working together, having contributors, kind of building something for the same goal that's by default positive, but like really a way to do that. And I would say that now we bring a kind of technology that is mature enough with all the Web3 and the decentralized autonomous organizations to already experiment things in this field, where you can have contributors coming together with a kind of shared governance and really a co-creation mindset, where you can bring different people. And one thing that we really want to push forward, so these days I'm working on different kind of projects, but if we stay on more the digital and digital skills, one thing that we want to push a lot is more the assessment of the digital competency. To after that, recommend really the pathway. So be more on the career counseling and the coaching, I will say, for people that have less opportunities, because as we said, we have a lot of knowledge already existing, a lot of contents and programs, but what you miss in all this mass of knowledge is probably the guidance most of the time. And so this technology with the blockchain and the smart contracts can bring two main things, maybe even three. You have kind of a new way to incentivize the learning journeys. After that, you have already the way to share the value. That means that if you help someone, by default, you can create a contract where together we build for your future, and when it will be the case, you can redistribute automatically to me the value that we generated. So that's something that is interesting. And if we stay more on the DAO approach, it's like we can really co-create. You can co-create with other, for example, you can create an agency of freelancers that is really working together. But even when you create a new product, so on the digital skills assessment, for example, we can work with our team, but we can also have another company or an NGO that is already having a methodology and co-create together. And after that, have a by default shared revenue approach or shared governance on these kind of products and elements that are there. So I think it's a very early stage approach, but the Web3 is also bringing a new way of embracing new collaboration and new kind of shared governance and co-creation. That for me is really the new way and the new opportunity to embrace if we want to build for the people, by the people in a sense. And I really believe that on the long run, we can build a lot of very positive things with these kind of new technologies as well, not to be on the hype on the DAOs and the crypto, not at all, but to be more on like the having a cooperative without border to build locally. That's amazing for me to think about this kind of elements. So really something that we are looking forward to build and to collaborate with anyone. So anyone that wants to contribute to projects or having some ideas on the digital side, on the digital skills, but also on any entrepreneurship project that is by default more positive towards social environmental angles without even trying to have like a standard of defining what is there. So I think the purpose of trying to do good things, we can definitely find ways to collaborate also with these kind of technologies. And that's something that is nice in a sense to envision. So to have a digital world where we co-create together for good things. It's things that I want to build and to continue to see in a sense. Because that's I think it's one of the beautiful things of the elements, and we should give it a try, not for the hype, but definitely for the new ways of building together.
Actually, thank you, because really you are the first to bring together a fairly old concept of open source, which was co-creation. But adding the blockchain, adding the Ether, the contracts in Ethereum and so on, you actually create a hybrid model where people also are rewarded for their work, as opposed to open source, which was primarily, having fun with code or having fun with applications. So thank you. You really put them together and made it into a consistent model that can serve the people, not only, the cloud companies.
Awesome. Oh, you've been sharing all these things, visions, tips already. But just to wrap up the conversation, what's your recommendation in general on the integration of sustainability and digital transformation? What's your key takeaways for our audience today to take home and start working on it?
I think you have to be very, I would say, basic and pragmatic. So you have to simplify. So the three main elements will be lead by example. And I really think that this consistency and this example bring everything, even if you are not perfect yet, by bringing the direction and showing that you want to do that, and by really trying to do that, I think it's already a big step. don't have to put a lot of metrics or buzzwords and so on. Just try to show that by default, by your genes, by your purpose, you want to do something that is good. And that's I think one of the best way to lead that. The second one is really to share it. So don't be the only one to do that. We always build better with others. So if you can really bring a culture and helping people on this journey as well, I think that's where you have a real transformation in your organization or even a society or community, because like that's where you have to do that. And to really emphasize on that, do that by leading with by example, bringing people with you, and in easy way. So cut all the buzzwords, the big standards, the big elements that are super complex. It will come if it has to come, but like at the beginning, people should really see something that is simple, something that is making sense, something that they can contribute to, and you have to bring that to the common public. So that's your role, to bring these complex topics as basic topics that you could explain to a kid. And that's where you can really bring this transformation if you want to see that happen. That's only if people can understand that very clearly. So try to vulgarize it at the maximum and to be consistent and to share that with people.
Thank you. I like it.
That's a great summary.
Mm-hmm.
Consistency, simplicity,
Yes.
and go with the people, not try to go with the theory and the methods and the geeky words.
And your people that are with you in this mission at the end we can just bring their own angles, can bring their own ideas, and like you can be surprised on where you will go, where you'll be going at the end, because like you will just share a new path that you can build together. So that's a good way to empower, to instead of spending a lot of money on your team building on one side and your social events on the other side, combine it together, like bring this purpose to life and say, okay, we want to do better, even if we are not so good right now, we want to do better. How do we do? So that's starting like this, and no one is perfect. That's definitely never the case, and that's I think where you bring people together for good ideas that are making sense at the end. You will never stop something like this, because you will bring a movement inside your organization and movement with everyone on board. So that's just amazing, and it's do different ways.
To involve people, to put them in the picture, right? To make them feel related. They're part of the plan, not just, it's just based on other people's ideas. Thank you, Yoann, for everything you shared. Yeah, very refreshing, very bold, and very futuristic, I will call. Yeah, a lot of these ideas, concepts, and your vision, it's really shaping a new landscape for us to live in. Thank you for taking the time joining us. And thank you all to our audience as well, always for joining us. Make sure to tuning in every week for a new episode of AKFI's Actionable ESG Talk series, where you can gain new perspectives on how to mitigate risks and create value by integrating ESG and digital transformation. Until next week, goodbye for now. Thank you, Yoann. Bye.
Thank you, Yoann. Bye-bye.
Thank you.